I was 49, broke, and 1 month away from losing everything when I got a call that changed my life. It was from a small-town attorney in Iowa. He said, "Your grandfather left behind a safety deposit box, but you'll need to pay $600 in back fees to open it." $600 I didn't have. I almost hung up. Until he said one more thing. "Your uncle tried to access it last month. We turned him away." That one sentence, it froze me. My uncle. The same man who'd cut me off from the family after Grandpa's funeral 15 years ago. What was he trying to hide? Section 1, the box and the debt. At 49, life had beaten me to the ground. My business had failed, my wife had left, and I was living in a rented room above a diner in Des Moines. The smell of burnt coffee and grease clung to my clothes. $600 might as well have been $6,000. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept seeing Grandpa's face in my mind, his old workbench, his oil-stained hands. The way he'd always whisper, "Everything of value isn't gold, son. Sometimes it's what others overlook." I didn't know why, but I felt like that box was calling to me. So the next morning, I pawned my watch, my last real possession, for $420 and borrowed the rest from the diner's cook, promising I'd pay him back in a week. 2 days later, I stood in front of the Jefferson County Bank, holding the deposit slip in my trembling hands. The clerk was an older woman with silver glasses. When I told her the name Franklin E. Thompson, my grandfather, she paused. "Oh," she said softly, "that box has been sealed for decades. You're the first family member since your uncle tried." I felt a chill run through me. She led me to a small, sterile room with metal drawers along the wall. The moment she unlocked box 312, I held my breath. Inside were only 3 things: a leather-bound notebook tied with a red ribbon, a folded will dated 1979, and a single envelope labeled, "For the one who stayed honest." I stared at it for a long time. I wasn't sure if that was supposed to be me. When I opened the envelope, my hands shook so badly the paper nearly tore. Inside was a single stock certificate, yellowed with age, showing ownership of 100 shares of Apple Computer Inc., dated 1980. At first I laughed. Apple, the computer company. I thought Grandpa must have been scammed, but when I checked online later that night, my heart stopped. Those 100 shares, with all the splits and growth, were now worth over $520 million. And then I noticed something else. The ownership had been transferred 5 years after Grandpa's death, signed by my uncle. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments about which country you're watching this video from. Enjoy the story. I sat there, staring at that signature, feeling the blood drain from my face. Had my uncle forged Grandpa's name? Had he stolen a fortune right out from under all of us? I didn't know it yet, but that single discovery would drag me into a web of forgery, hidden accounts, and betrayal that had been buried for 40 years. And by the time it was over, I'd uncover the real reason Grandpa left that box locked on, why he'd made sure only I could find it. The next morning, I woke up before dawn, my mind racing. I couldn't shake the image of that forged signature. My uncle's name, Richard Thompson, neatly scribbled on a document worth $500 million. I'd seen his handwriting 100 times before. Birthday cards, old checks, letters to my mum when she was still alive. The signature on the transfer form was his, no question about it. But the real question was, how had he done it? I decided to visit the lawyer who'd first called me, the one who mentioned the $600 fee. His name was Mr. Carter, and his office was one of those small-town places with dusty shelves and a coffee machine that looked older than me. When I showed him the transfer paper, his brow furrowed. This is definitely a forgery," he muttered, running a finger along the faded ink. "But here's the thing, this form wouldn't have been easy to fake. It would have required both notarization and witness signatures." "So, you're saying he had help?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "Or access to someone who did." That's when it hit me. My uncle had worked in the same bank that held Grandpa's safety deposit box for nearly 20 years. The perfect setup. I felt a sick twist in my stomach. All those years I'd believed my uncle was just the family's successful businessman, the one who made smart investments while the rest of us struggled. And now, I realized, he'd built his empire off Grandpa's legacy. I left the office, anger burning in my chest. But I needed proof. Something undeniable. That night, I drove to the old Thompson family house, my uncle's property now. The place looked like a fortress. Security cameras, iron gates, and a driveway lined with polished cars. But at the edge of the woods behind the house, the old barn still stood Grandpa's workshop, long abandoned. I parked half a mile away and walked in the dark, my boots crunching on the frost-bitten grass. When I reached the barn, I found the doors chained shut, but the side window was loose. I squeezed through, flashlight in hand. The air inside smelled of dust and oil. Grandpa's old workbench was still there, cluttered with rusted tools and faded blueprints. But on the far wall, behind a cracked mirror, something caught my eye: a small metal safe, hidden behind a false panel. My pulse quickened. I'd seen that safe before when I was a kid. Grandpa used to tell me, "That's where truth sleeps. Son, never let greed wake it." At the time, I thought he was just being poetic. Now I realized he'd been warning me. The safe had no digital lock, just an old-fashioned dial. I tried Grandpa's birthday first, nothing, then Grandma's, still nothing. And then I remembered the strange phrase he'd say whenever he fixed something broken. One turn back, to forward. I tried 1204, the date of their anniversary. The dial clicked. Inside were stacks of yellowed papers, bank ledgers, correspondence, notarized forms, and a sealed envelope marked RT, my uncle's initials. I tore it open. Inside was a letter in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. It said, "If you're reading this, the money has already been stolen. Trust no one who smiles to Izeli. The truth lies in account 17,294 filed under Apple Holdings." My hands went cold. Account 17,294. That wasn't just a clue, it was a map to the missing fortune. I backed away from the workbench, the flashlight trembling in my grip. Outside, I heard gravel crunching footsteps approaching the barn. Someone else was there. Through a crack in the wall, I saw headlights sweep across the field and a familiar black SUV pull up. It was my uncle. He stepped out, phone pressed to his ear, saying something I couldn't hear. But his tone low and furious made my stomach twist. And then, his eyes turned toward the barn. He knew I was there. I froze. Through the cracks in the barn wall, I watched my uncle's silhouette cross the field slow, deliberate, like a man who already knew exactly where to look. My heart pounded so hard, I thought he could hear it. I switched off the flashlight and crouched behind the workbench, clutching Grandpa's papers to my chest. The barn door creaked open. "Ethan," he called out softly, his voice calm but sharp as glass. "I know you're in here." I didn't answer. My breath came in short bursts. The floorboards groaned under his shoes as he stepped inside. "You shouldn't have opened that box," he continued. "There are things you don't understand, things that were never meant for you." I bit my tongue, anger and fear battling inside me. He moved closer, sweeping his flashlight across the room. The beam passed inches from my face, but I stayed still, hidden in the shadows. Then, he stopped in front of the workbench. I could see his hand reach down and pick up the empty envelope, the one I'd taken Grandpa's letter from. He let out a long sigh. "So you found it." Before I could think, I bolted for the side window. My shoulder slammed into the frame as I dove through it, landing hard on the cold dirt outside. Behind me, I heard him shout, "Ethan, stop." I ran. Through the field, past the oak trees, across the road where my old car sat waiting. My lungs burned. I didn't look back until I was behind the wheel, speeding away. Headlights cutting through the fog. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing in the road, watching. Not chasing, just watching. When I finally reached my room, above the diner, I locked the door and dumped everything onto the table. Grandpa's letter, the bank ledgers, the file number, 17,294. I needed help, someone who could trace that account. That's when I called Maggie. An old friend who'd worked as a financial auditor before her company went under. We hadn't spoken in years, but when I told her what I'd found, her voice went cold. "Send me photos," she said. "Every page." I spent the next hour snapping pictures and sending them to her through an encrypted app. 10 minutes later, she called back. "Ethan, this isn't just about stolen inheritance. That account's $17,294. It's tied to a holding company registered in Delaware. Apple Holdings, just like your grandfather wrote. But here's the twist, it's still active." My head spun. Active? You mean someone's still moving money? "Not just someone," she said. "There were recent transactions. Large ones. And one name keeps showing up on the authorization logs: Richard Thompson, my uncle, again." But Maggie wasn't done. "The company's assets, they match a major real estate portfolio in California, and it's worth roughly $500 million. I sank back in my chair. Grandpa's Apple stock hadn't vanished, had been funneled into shell accounts and hidden companies, and my uncle had been milking it for decades, laundering profits through fake ventures. I didn't sleep that night. Every sound outside made me flinch. I kept expecting my uncle to show up at the door. By sunrise, I'd made a decision. I was going to expose him. I packed the documents in a backpack, drove 3 hours to Cedar Falls, and met Maggie in person. She looked pale, nervous. "Ethan, before we go any further," she whispered, "you need to understand something. If your uncle's been hiding money this long, he didn't do it alone. Someone inside the system helped him." "What do you mean?" "I mean the forgery, the account transfers, they all point to inside access. Possibly federal-level connections." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. My uncle wasn't just a thief, he was protected. And then Maggie's expression changed. She was staring past me. I turned on, saw a black SUV parked across the street. The same one from the barn, its engine was still running. Maggie's voice trembled. "Ethan, I think they already know we're here." The air inside the coffee shop went cold. Through the window, the black SUV idled quietly across the street, its tinted windows reflecting the early morning light. I couldn't see who was inside, but I didn't have to. I knew. Maggie gripped her cup so tightly her hands shook. "Ethan, listen to me," she whispered. "We can't stay here." We left through the back door, slipping into an alley behind the shop. My heart was pounding again, just like in the barn. Every sound, the crunch of gravel, the hum of traffic felt louder, closer. "Where do we go?" I asked. "My office," she said quickly. "I have a backup drive there. If we can pull the full records on account 17,294, we'll have proof enough to go to the feds." Her office was a few blocks away, inside an old brick building that smelled of dust and stale coffee. The elevator creaked as we rode up to the 5th floor. I tried to stay calm, but my mind kept flashing back to the barn, to my uncle's voice in the dark. "You shouldn't have opened that box." When the doors opened, Maggie moved fast, unlocking her door, booting up her laptop, plugging in a thick external hard drive. Her fingers flew over the keys. "Okay," she murmured. "I'm tracing the paper trail from the Delaware Shell Company. Apple Holdings links to 4 other entities, each transferring funds every 6 months. The last transaction," she froze. Her eyes darted to the screen. "What is it?" I asked. Her voice was barely a whisper. "The last transaction was yesterday. $500,000 wired out of the account too." She looked up at me. "To a trust in your name." My stomach dropped. "What? That's not possible." "It's possible if someone wants to frame you." Before I could respond, a loud bang echoed down the hallway. We both flinched. Another bank closer this time. Footsteps. Heavy, coming fast. Maggie yanked the drive from her laptop and shoved it into my backpack. "Go," she hissed. "Take this, and run." "What about you?" "I'll stall them." I didn't want to leave her, but there was no time. The door handle rattled. I slipped out through the fire escape, just as the door burst open behind me. As I clambered down the metal stairs, I heard shouting men's voices, then a single gunshot. My breath caught. For a moment, I couldn't move. Then survival kicked in. I sprinted down the alley, jumped into my car, and sped off, gripping the wheel with shaking hands. Tears blurred my vision as I drove. Maggie was gone, and now whoever killed her thought I was part of it. I pulled over miles away, near an abandoned gas station, trying to catch my breath. My phone buzzed an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. A voice calm and familiar filled the line. "Ethan," my uncle said. "I warned you not to open that box." I could hear faint static like he was on speaker. "What do you want?" I shouted. "I want my property back. That drive belongs to me." "It was Grandpa's. You stole everything from him." He chuckled, low and cruel. "Your grandfather was a sentimental fool. He didn't understand how the world works. But you, Ethan, you still have a chance. Hand over the documents, and I'll make this all go away." I didn't answer, he continued. "You think the FBI will believe a bankrupt drifter over me? Every transaction points to you. The trust is in your name. The transfers trace to your account. You're already the criminal on paper." Asterisk, my blood ran cold. He'd set me up perfectly. "I'm giving you 24 hours, he said softly. "After that, I can't promise your safety." The line went dead. I sat in silence, the phone still pressed to my ear. For the first time, I realized just how deep this went. My uncle hadn't just stolen Grandpa's fortune, he'd built a web of lies so thick it could crush me completely. And yet, in my backpack was the one thing that could destroy him: the drive with every hidden transaction, every shell company, every forged signature. I looked at the horizon, the sun sinking behind the trees. If I wanted justice, I'd have to risk everything, because by morning, I wouldn't just be broke. I'd be hunted. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Maggie's face the moment before the shot, her hand pushing the drive into my backpack. She died trying to protect the truth. By dawn, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't running anymore. I stopped at a rest area off the interstate, parked beneath the faded lights, and pulled out the drive. My fingers trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. A folder appeared on the screen. APPLE Holdings, Confidential. Inside were hundreds of documents, bank statements, transfer logs, corporate filings, and one folder labeled Family Trust. When I opened it, my throat tightened. There, it was proof that my uncle had transferred Grandpa's Apple stock into shell companies, then into offshore accounts, all under false names. He'd built his empire on theft. But deeper inside the folder was something I didn't expect: a video file dated April 14, 1987. I clicked play. The screen flickered, and there he was, Grandpa, sitting in his workshop, speaking directly to the camera. His voice was frail, but steady. "If you're watching this," he said, "then the truth has finally come to light. I trusted Richard once. I believed he'd carry on the family legacy. But greed got him first. I hid the evidence where only an honest man would look inside what he thought had no value. The box was never about money. It was about character." He paused, eyes soft. "Ethan, if it's you who found this, I always knew you'd do the right thing." My chest tightened. I could barely breathe. All the anger, all the loss, it came rushing back. Grandpa had known, he'd predicted everything. I copied the files, encrypted the drive, and uploaded everything to a private cloud. Then I emailed a secure link to every major financial journalist and the Department of Justice. If I went down, I wasn't going alone. An hour later, as I pulled back onto the highway, I noticed the headlights behind me close, too close. The same black SUV. My uncle wasn't waiting for 24 hours. He tried to run me off the road near the old iron bridge that crossed the river. The guardrail shook as my tires screeched against it. I could see him in the driver's seat, calm, confident. Like this was just another business transaction to him. But he didn't know. I'd already sent everything. When he pulled alongside me, shouting through the window, I shouted back, "It's over, Uncle Richard. The FBI has the files." For the first time, I saw fear flash across his face. He swerved, overcorrected, and his SUV spun out, crashing through the railing. I barely managed to stop as his car plunged into the river below. The sound of metal crunching and water roaring echoed into the cold morning air. I stood there, trembling, watching as the current swallowed the black SUV. Part of me wanted to dive in, but deep down, I knew it was too late. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in a federal building, giving my statement. The investigation made national headlines. Billion-dollar inheritance scandal exposed. The documents proved everything. Decades of fraud, forged wills, offshore laundering. Maggie was named a hero for uncovering the trail. Her name would never be forgotten. As for me, I didn't walk away rich. The courts froze every asset tied to the stolen fortune. But I did get one thing Grandpa always wanted for me: peace. One afternoon, I returned to his old barn. The air smelled like cedar and dust. The broken tools were still there, and sunlight streamed through the cracks in the walls. I sat down at his workbench, ran my hand across the worn wood, and whispered, "I did it, Grandpa." Then I noticed something small beneath the bench, a metal plate I'd never seen before. With words carved into it, "Wealth fades. Truth remains." I smiled for the first time in months. Because in the end, it wasn't the money that mattered, it was the lesson. Grandpa hadn't just left me a box. He'd left me a legacy of integrity. And though I'd started broke and broken, I'd uncovered something far more valuable than fortune: the truth.